The ranch sat on the edge of the desert plains, where wind carried dust across endless stretches of land. Samuel Hargrove had lived there alone for many years, his only companions a few horses and the silence of open country. Once he had family, but time and war had taken them. Now, his days were filled with tending cattle and repairing fences. He kept away from townsfolk, who called him strange for choosing solitude. Samuel didn't mind. Loneliness was heavy, but it was familiar until the day a group of Apache riders appeared on his land, seeking something unexpected. 10 of them approached carefully, their silhouettes sharp against the evening sun. The leader, a tall man with braids and stern eyes, raised a hand in greeting. Samuel tightened his grip on the rifle slung over his shoulder but did not lift it. He knew tensions between settlers and the Apache ran deep, and mistrust could spark bloodshed. Yet these men looked weary, not hostile. The leader spoke first in accented English. "We need shelter. One night. Nothing more." Samuel studied their faces, dusty, tired, carrying the look of men hunted. Against his instincts, he finally nodded. "Come in." They led their horses to the corral, moving with quiet discipline. Samuel guided them toward the barn, offering hay and water. The Apache warriors treated the animals gently, whispering in their own tongue. Inside the house, the smell of beans and bread lingered, a meal Samuel had prepared for himself. When he motioned toward the table, the leader gave a brief nod, and the men sat in silence. Their presence filled the cabin with tension, yet no threats were spoken. Samuel poured water into tin cups. "Why my ranch?" he asked finally. The leader's reply was simple, "Because you listen." That night, Samuel lay awake on his cot, the fire crackling low. The Apache men rested on the floorboards, weapons at their side, but not in hand. He studied their faces in the dim glow. Some were scarred, some still young, yet all carried the weight of hardship. He remembered his own battles years ago, how his rifle had taken lives not so different from theirs. He wondered if fate now demanded he repay a debt. Outside, coyotes howled across the barren land. Samuel closed his eyes, unsure if he had just invited danger or the beginning of something else. Morning brought clarity in the form of silence. The Apache men had risen before dawn, tending to the corral as though it were their own. Samuel stepped outside, surprised to see them working. The leader approached him. "Your ranch is strong," he said. "But you alone cannot defend it." Samuel frowned, wary of hidden meaning. "I manage well enough." The man shook his head. "Soldiers march near. They take land. They burn homes. We saw smoke on the horizon." Samuel's heart tightened. He had heard rumors but thought them distant. Now the threat was closer than he realized. As days turned into weeks, their stay stretched longer than Samuel expected. The Apache repaired fences, fetched water, and hunted game. They asked for no payment, only respect. Samuel, though cautious, began to see them less as strangers and more as allies. Around the fire, they shared stories, he of his lost family, they of raids, betrayals, and survival. Trust grew slowly, stitched together by hard work and necessity. The town whispered about his guests, calling him reckless, but Samuel ignored them. For the first time in years, laughter and voices filled the ranch, breaking the long silence of solitude. One evening, a young Apache named Taza approached Samuel with curiosity. "Why live alone?" he asked. Samuel hesitated before answering. "Because the world has taken too much already. Easier not to care." Taza studied him, then shook his head. "A man without people is already lost." The words struck Samuel harder than expected. He had built walls around himself, thinking them protection, but perhaps they had become a prison. Watching the 10 men gathered around the fire, sharing food and stories, he realized the emptiness he had accepted for years was not strength, but surrender to grief. Trouble came one hot afternoon when a patrol of soldiers arrived at the ranch. Their leader demanded answers. "We heard you've been harboring Apaches," he said coldly. Samuel stood tall at the gate, rifle resting in his hands. "They're my guests," he replied firmly. The soldier sneered. Guests? They're fugitives. You'll hand them over, or we'll burn this place to the ground. Behind him, the Apache stood ready, bows and rifles in hand. Tension filled the air like a drawn bowstring. Samuel's voice did not waver. This is my land. And as long as they're here, they're under my protection. The standoff dragged into silence, the heat pressing down on every breath. Finally, the soldiers spat curses and rode off, promising to return with more men. The ranch was safe for the moment, but danger loomed heavy. That night, Samuel sat with the Apache leader by the fire. You risk your life for us, the man said. Samuel stared into the flames. Maybe I'm done standing by while the world takes what it wants. Maybe I owe more than I can repay. The leader gave a rare smile. Then perhaps you are not alone anymore. In the weeks that followed, Samuel and the Apache prepared. Trenches were dug near the corral, lookout points marked on the ridge, and rifles cleaned with care. The men moved with discipline born from hardship, and Samuel found himself relying on their strength. At night, the ranch buzzed with planning, strategy, and whispered songs in the Apache tongue. Though Samuel did not understand the words, he felt their rhythm and ancient bond to land and spirit. What began as shelter had turned into something greater, a pact of survival between a solitary rancher and a people searching for safety. One morning, Samuel noticed Atsa, the youngest of the group, teaching a horse to respond without reins. The bond between boy and animal reminded Samuel of his own. Youth, before war and grief hardened him. He joined in, showing how to train with patience. The boy's smile, quick and bright, stirred something long buried in Samuel, a glimpse of fatherhood, of the family he had lost. For the first time in years, he felt purpose return. It was no longer about simply enduring each day. Now, he was part of something larger than himself, and it gave him strength. The inevitable came on a stormy night. Soldiers returned in greater numbers, torches in hand, demanding surrender. Lightning cracked across the sky as Samuel and the Apache stood their ground. Shots rang out, echoing against the hills. Horses screamed, rifles thundered, and firelight painted shadows across the ranch. Samuel fought beside the Apache as if they were his own kin, defending not just his land but the people who had given it new life. The battle raged until the storm's fury drowned out the clash of men, and the soldiers finally retreated, beaten back into the darkness. When dawn broke, the ranch was scarred but standing. The men gathered, weary but alive. Samuel's hands shook as he looked across the land, fences broken, fields burned, but hearts unbroken. The Apache leader placed a hand on his shoulder. You fought with us. You are one of us now. The words filled Samuel with quiet pride. For years, he had been a man without family, but now he felt the weight of belonging. In their eyes, he saw not pity or suspicion, but respect. And in his heart, for the first time in decades, he felt truly alive. Life continued, not without hardship, but with unity. The Apache stayed, not as guests, but as part of the ranch. Together they rebuilt, planting crops, mending fences, and sharing the burdens of work. Samuel learned their language bit by bit, while they adopted some of his ways. Nights were filled with stories, songs, and laughter. The solitude that had once defined him was gone, replaced by the hum of community. The land was no longer just Samuel's ranch. It was a refuge, a home forged from trust and courage in a time when both were rare commodities. Years might pass, battles might return, and the world beyond the ranch might never change. But within those fences, something had been preserved: honor, kinship, and the fragile bridge between two worlds. On a quiet evening, Samuel sat on the porch as the Apache men shared stories by the fire, their voices carrying into the desert night. He thought of the day they had first arrived, 10 riders weary and desperate. He had given them shelter, but in truth, they had given him far more, the chance to live again, not in loneliness, but in the strength of family.